morning, students. Welcome to this session. I am Annette Mosioki, and I'll be going through the techniques we usually have for biology, paper 1. I am a NEC trained officer, and I will take you through what we have been having, the challenges we've been having during the marking exercise in the past years. To start us off, we're going to have the layout of the paper. We're going to have the layout of the paper. Just a brief introduction. I'll tell you what the paper entails. Biology paper 1 is a theory paper with a total of 80 marks. And the questions are going to require mostly short answer items. In addition, the time allocated for the paper is 2 hours. The number of questions have been varying from year to year, and mostly they're going to vary from 22 to 31 questions. In addition, all questions are answered in the spaces provided in each question, and therefore no extra writing material is issued during the exam. In paper 1, all the questions are obtained from the entire syllabus. We don't have any allocation of the chapters for paper 1. We get them from the entire syllabus, from Form 1 to Form 4 work. And also, lastly, all questions are compulsory. You don't get to choose the questions. We don't have optional questions in paper 1. Next, I'm going also to tell you on what the examiner looks for. Number 1, as an examiner, we look for accuracy. Accuracy of the work that you're doing, accuracy in the answers that you're giving. The answers should be precise. You should be able to write and present your answers in a precise way. Number 2, we also look for the speed. That is how fast enough you're able to complete answering all the questions. In addition, also, the examiner is going to look for the ability for the student to follow all the instructions which have been given. In such a case, you as the learner, you are able to interpret the questions or the tasks which have been given well. In such a case, if you have a wrong interpretation, then that is going to lead to the wrong answers. Next, I'm going to take you through the terms or the words we use in the questions so that you can know what is expected of you as a learner when you are giving the answers. Number 1, we have questions which are going to start with state. State. If the question is asking you to state, it doesn't need any explanation. You just give the answers the way they are. You don't need to go further to explain on them. Next is when you have a question on give and write down. Such a question is going to require only specific answers. It requires only specific answers. Another word we use is define. Define. For example, if you have been told to define the term respiration, to define, the learner is required to give the precise meaning of the word. Another word we also use is to name or to identify. That one also, we also have it apply in cases where we have the diagrams or even questions which also start with the name, not necessarily to be in diagram form. In such a case, you only give a specific name. If it is in a diagram and you've been told to name the parts, you just give the specific name of that part. Another word we use is to tabulate. Tabulate, tabulate. When a question is asking you to tabulate, you are going to give the answers in a table form. You give the answers in a table form. A good example, if you have to tabulate the differences between the animal and the plant cell. In such a case, you're going to use a table. You're going to have the two sides, one side for the animal cell, the other side, you're going to have the plant cell, and give the differences in a table form. Another word we use is differentiate. We also have questions which start with differentiate. In such a case, you are required to list the differences between the items. In addition to that, the comparison must be clear between the two items. The comparison must be clear between the two items. Again, I'm also going to refer to the animal and plant cell. If you have to give the differences between the two, in a case where to bring out the comparison, if you're talking about the shape, in one case, you're going to bring out it is regular. The other case, you're going to say it is irregular in shape so that the comparison can be brought out clearly. Another word we use is to distinguish. Distinguish. To distinguish, which is almost similar to differentiate. When the exam or the question is asking you to distinguish, you're supposed to separate or to show uniqueness of the two items. To show uniqueness of the two items. A good example I use is for the terms guttation and transpiration. For guttation and transpiration, if you were to give the uniqueness of the two items, a student will be required to write how the water is lost through the two. That is for guttation. That is in form of the water droplets. For transpiration, you talk of it is lost in form of water vapor. That is one uniqueness you'd have in such a question. Then also you'd also talk of another uniqueness in where the two processes are taking place. For guttation, where we would talk of the hydathodes. For transpiration, we would talk about the stomata in the leaves. That now brings out the case of distinguishing. Another word we are going also to get in questions. We also have a word like account or explain, to account or to explain. That one is going to be used when you have to give a reason for the results or observations using the biological theory. You give a reason for the results or the observations using biological theory. So in such a case where you have to account for, you have to bring out the explanation from the observation which has been seen and explain it further. The other one is the word describe, to describe, which requires stating the characteristics. To describe, it's going to require stating the characteristics. We also use the word outline, to outline. Outline needs the student, to give general explanation, to give a general explanation without giving a description. The learner is expected to give general explanation without giving a description. Those are some of the common words, and not all of them apply also to paper 1. We also have most of the words also used in paper 2 and paper 3. And next, I'm also going to take you through the other subtopic, which is going to lead us on how the students lose marks, how the students are going to lose marks. So I'll guide you. Sorry. Before we go to that, I'm going to also take you through the questions which you expect in paper 1. Before we look at how the students are going to lose the marks, I'll take you through some of the questions which are expected in paper 1. And number 1, the questions are going to test on the knowledge of the student, And in such a case, we are going to have words like list, name, mention, or even state. And that is going to require the learner to have a content mastery in biology, because all in all, the learner is required to recall on the past knowledge in biology. The other type of questions we expect, we have what we call the analytical questions. Analytical questions, which are going to be mathematical in nature. A good example, if you have to calculate on the magnification, if you have to calculate on a length, or even in a case where also you have to calculate on number of organisms, that is in ecology, we call them the analytical questions. In analytical questions, the drawing abilities are also tested. You also have drawing abilities being tested in such a case. Then the questions are going to use words like calculate, draw a diagram of a needed organism. That one is going to be done in a case where we have the analytical questions. The other kind of questions we also expect in paper 1, we also have evaluation questions. These ones are mostly in data analysis, where we use words like compare, contrast, and also select. Another set of questions we also have in paper 1, we also use what we call the analogical questions. And for such questions, words like differences give the differences, similarities, advantages, disadvantages, importance, compare and contrast, distinguish, and differentiate. Those are some of the words we use for the analogical questions. We also have the application questions. For the application questions, which are practical-oriented questions. For the practical-oriented questions, you're going to get in such a case for the practical-oriented ones. Just a minute. Sorry for that. For the practical-oriented questions, a good example is questions on physiological processes, like processes on diffusion and osmosis, which are going to require the student to do most of the thinking. You're going to have most of the thinking by the student when giving an explanation for such processes. Then allow me now to take you through how the students use marks, in paper 1, how the students are going to use the marks. I'll take you through all the mistakes that we have encountered in the past when marking the exams. And I hope this is going to be of great help to you students. Next time when you are handling the exam, you can be keen on that. So I'll take you through the points. Number 1, we talk of what we call a language barrier. We have language barrier. Language barrier is going to affect the learner in such a case that he or she is going to be not able to understand the questions. That one, mostly we're going to have it mainly because of mother tongue, and also Kiswahili is also another influence in such a case. If the learner is not able to understand the question, then the learner is not able to interpret the question well. And in such a case, also the answers which are going to be given are not going to be correct. And number 2, by not using the technical terms properly, when the learner is not using the technical terms properly, Another one is repetition of answers. We have repetition of answers. When we have a repetition of the answers. Another one is when writing irrelevant answers. And to expand on that, a learner should look at the marks which have been awarded on the question. The marks are going to guide the learner on how many answers to give. In such a case, if the learner goes overboard and gives extra answers, then the answers are not will not score. The answers will not score. We only mark the number which is required. A good example, if the question is guiding you with 3 marks, if it is guiding you with 3 marks, just give the 3 marks. 3 answers, sorry, just give the 3 answers. If you extend to give to more than 5, the examiner will only mark the first 3 and underline from that point. So the examiner does not go ahead to check on the extra answers which have been given. Strictly that one has been followed in marking. We don't even look at the extra answers which have been given. Another way in which the students are going to lose the mistake, this is quite a simple one, the wrong spellings. When we have the spelling mistakes, this has affected students year in, year out. It has been a common problem with the wrong spellings, because when we have the spellings not well written, at times the spellings or the word which comes out from the spellings gives a different meaning. It's going to give a different meaning. I'll give an example of the question we had on study of the cell. The study of the cell, the students were required to name the study of the cell, of which it is cytology, C-Y-T-O-L-O-G-Y. And you would get, the students would be writing on cytology from the word city, C-I-T-O-L-O-G-Y. And that careless mistake does not score. Other examples of spelling mistakes we've had, we have, instead of the learner talking of the liver, talks of river. That also changes the meaning. Instead of talking of liver, it becomes a river. We also have in placentation, instead of axile, placentation, they talk of axial, and that also changes the meaning. In such a case where the spellings have been not well written and they change the meaning of the word, the learner is not going to score. Then another way in which also we have students losing the marks, we also have by not following the instructions given, If the question is just telling you to state or just explain, or even you describe, once the learner gets the question, he should go ahead or she should go ahead and underline the keywords in the exam and also in each and every question. There are those keywords which are going to guide you on how to answer the question. If the question is going to tell you to state 5 advantages, the keywords there would be state, that is a keyword to be underlined. 5 is also another keyword to be underlined. The other keyword is advantages. So that one, it's going to help the learner and also guide the learner in answering the question. Another way in which the students are going to lose the marks is repeating one point always for the same answer, for the same question. Repeating one point always for the same question. A good example is a question which would require the student to state 3 characteristics of the xerophytes. if the student is required to state 3 characteristics of the xerophytes, that is a question which has 3 marks. It is a question which has 3 marks. In such a case, for the xerophytes, we know they are the plants in the arid and semi-arid areas. And we have different parts for the xerophytes to expound on giving the characteristics. A student would go ahead and talk of a characteristic based on one part, like the stomata. They would talk of stomata. The student would also talk of the stomata having the reversed rhythm, reversed stomatal rhythm. The student would also talk of the stomata being on the underside of the leaf. That is a question which would also cost the student, because the student has repeated all the answer only in one part, and we can distribute the 3 marks on the different parts of the plant. Like in such a case, the learner would also go ahead and talk about the roots, having the roots being deep-rooted. They would also talk about the thick waxy cuticle, to be able to distribute the answers and also to distribute the marks. That is one error the learner is going to do. Then next, we talk of inability of a student to identify tied questions, inability of the student to identify the tied questions. Tied questions, you're going to get a question with part A, part B, where in part B, it's going to depend on what you have given in part A. That is a tied question. And in such a case, if you encounter a tied question, if part A of that question is not known, or if the student is not sure of what to write in part A, I would advise you leave it blank, because if you identify it wrongly, it is going to cost you the scoring of part B or even part C. It is advisable to leave it blank. If part A is going to be identified wrongly, again, it also disqualifies part B, so you don't also score for part B. And such examples of questions, we call them the tied questions. We call them tied questions. Another point on how the students lose marks is also on giving extra points, giving extra points. And in such a case, when you give the extra points and you don't lead or guide the examiner on how you have arranged your answers, then also that also leads to the student also losing on some marks. For marking, we mark the answers from left to right, from left to right, from left to right, not going downwards. We go from left to right, unless the student has guided the examiner by numbering the answers. Unless the student guides the examiner by numbering the answers. That way it would be easier for the examiner to follow on the numbering. Where numbering has not been done, then the rule still applies, marking from left to right. Another one is omission. We have also the omission of keywords, omission of keywords while giving the answers, omission of the keywords. A good example I would use in the definition of osmosis, where you have to talk about the movement of the water molecules from their region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Then if you, as the student, is going to omit the semi-permeable membrane, that also does not score because of omitting such a keyword, semi-permeable membrane, because the student at such a point has an incomplete statement. Even not talking about the water molecules, where they are moving from to what type of concentration they are moving to. Also, that is also an omission of the keywords. Another way in which the students are going to lose marks is by use of wrong symbols, using wrong symbols and formula, use of wrong symbols and formula, wrong symbols and formula, like in calculating in number of organisms, calculating of the number of organisms when we have in ecology, where we are using the capture, recapture, the formula. If you end up using the wrong formula, then you're not going also to end up working out the work well, and that also does not score. That also does not score. Wrong symbols in mostly in questions which are going to have genetics, where the students mostly are going also to leave out the cross symbol, That one also does not score. Another point on also how the student lose on the marks is by using the wrong units, by use of wrong units. A good example is when we have a question on magnification. When we have a question on magnification and the student goes ahead and puts or writes units next to the answer, that also does not score. If you add the units next to the answer, a good example, when you're giving total magnification to be times 100, then the student will also go ahead and write in centimeters. That one is not going to score. Addition of the units. Also, wrong units are a good example also when you're talking of the conversion of the micrometers to nanometers. That also is going to cost the scoring of the student. Another one, use of poor language, Like you, as a learner, you would use the word transporting of impulses instead of transmission of impulses. The word there is using wrong biology, transporting, of which the impulses are not transported. They're not transported, they're going to be transmitted. Another example, like for the ileum, the student would talk of a large ileum instead of a long ileum. Such words lead to not scoring. Another point also on losing marks is contradicting your answers, in a case where you need to define on hemolysis, and you talk of hemolysis is the process by which the animal cell, in this case we are talking about the red blood cell, gains water by osmosis and bursts when placed in a hypertonic solution. When placed in a hypertonic solution. The first bit of the answer is quite correct, but then the learner ends up by saying when placed in a hypertonic solution. That has contradicted the whole answer. Instead of hypotonic, the learner is now talking of a hypertonic solution. So in such a case, the word hypertonic is going to disqualify the mark. Hypertonic is going to disqualify the mark. However, the first part was so correct, then the student loses out on that. Then another way is when we have direct translation from Kiswahili or mother tongue, have direct translation from the mother tongue or even Kiswahili. That also has been a problem. Another way Also, the students are going to lose out on the marks is when giving the answers in a negative form. When giving the answers in a negative form, that means the student is going to negate. The student is going to negate. And I'm going to use an example I write for you in such a case where the learner has negated the statement. I'll give an example in such a case where the learner is giving the difference between the plant cell In such a case, the student here would talk about the plant cell, regular in shape. They would talk of it being regular in shape. And instead of telling us how the shape it is for the animal cell, then the learner goes ahead and tells us for the animal cell, it is not regular in shape. It's not regular in shape. In such a case, the learner there does not score. In such a case, the learner does not score. The answer or the correct one which would score, the learner is needed to give it as simple as irregular in shape. Irregular in shape. Not regular in shape does not score. A difference like the plant cell. The plant cell has chloroplast, such a difference. And then the learner goes ahead and talks of the animal cell lacks chloroplast. That would be okay. The student has not negated. It is simple as that. So the learner would say the plant cell has chloroplast. On the other side, for the animal cell, the learner would say the animal cell lacks chloroplast. That would be okay. So the learner would score on that. So in such a case, when giving the differences, you don't negate. For the other side, you don't negate. But I have said that it is going to be applied in cases like what I've given you for the chloroplast. The plant cell has the chloroplast. The animal cell, it is simple, it lacks the chloroplast. That is going to apply in such a case. Another point is when you're giving incomplete statements, when the student is giving incomplete statements, when the student gives incomplete statements, maybe in definition, maybe also in explanation, or even in accounting for. Another point also, which is also going to lead to the learner losing on the marks, is in a case where we are dealing with writing of the dental formula. When we are writing the dental formula, in such a case, when writing the dental formula, such errors the student is going to make, some errors the student is going to make is when writing the initials of the teeth in capital letters, when they write initials of the teeth in capital letters, when we have absence of the fraction sign, when you have absence of the fraction sign, and also when inserting a semicolon, between the initials, and I'm going to show you on how we write the dental formula so that you can identify on how you can do it quite well. As I have said, we're going to have the initials in small letters. So if it is for the incisors, that is how we're going to have for the incisors. If we are talking of the canines, for the canines, then we have premolars, we have the premolars. And for the molars, you don't go ahead and insert a semicolon. You don't insert the semicolon. All the types of teeth are going to be indicated using a small letter. Use a small letter. Then in such a case, if you have to work out on the dental formula and get the total number of teeth, in such a case, like the example we have here, something else I've also commented on is not leaving out the fraction sign. For each, it should have the fraction sign. The fraction sign is going to show what is on the upper jaw and what is on the lower jaw. And remember also that this is only giving us half of what we have in the upper jaw and also in the lower jaw. So in such a case where the student has to come and calculate the total number of teeth, you're going to have an addition of what we have given there. Like in our case, we would have the 2 plus 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 12, 13. That would give us 13. And to get the total number of teeth, we would multiply by 2, and then that would give us 26. That would give us 26. Some students will go ahead and just give the 26 as the answer. In such a case, they don't score. In such a case, they don't score. If you just come directly and give the total number of teeth as 26, you don't score. But get the total, then you multiply by 2. Get the total, multiply by 2. And then you are going now to get the total number of teeth. I've also said that you don't miss out on the fraction sign. You don't miss out on the fraction sign to indicate what we have in the upper jaw and what we have in the lower jaw. Then another issue we also have, we've come across is when the students give wrong taxonomic units, when they're going to give wrong taxonomic units, e.g. for birds, they are going to give it as class birds, instead of aves, instead of aves, class princess for the fish. The student would go ahead to give as class fish, fish instead of princess. That also does not score. That does not score. In such a case, also, when you're talking of these scientific words, when you start them with a small letter, that also does not score. That does not score. When you start with a small letter, it does not score. And I'll show you a good example. When you're writing such words, you make sure you also check on the letter which is going to start. So in such a case, where the student has written it quite well, phylum, arthropoda, that one is going to score. It's not going to score because of the small letter they have started with. They have started with a small letter. So in such a case, they will not score. But the second one is the one which is going to score. The second one is going to score in such a case. So that is a very simple mistake. It's a very simple mistake. It's a very simple mistake which is commonly done, even for the A's, starting with the letter A in small letters, that will also cost the student not scoring. Another way in which the students lose on the marks, another way in which they lose on the marks is when they are using wrong terms. When you use wrong terms, words which are oftenly not well used, like words like prevent, words like reduce. Mostly the learner, the student, is going to use it where it is not applying. A good example, the student would talk of the synovial fluid. The synovial fluid prevents friction, prevents friction. In such a case, we don't use the word prevent. The learner or the student should use the word reduce friction, reduce friction. So prevent is not going to score. The prevent is not going to score, but what scores here is the reducing friction, reducing friction. Another common mistake done by the students is when writing the equations, when writing the equations. And I'll give you some key points to guide you when writing the equations. If it is a word equation, let it remain all through to be a word equation. Let it remain all through to be a word equation. Do not mix the words and the chemical symbols. Do not mix words and the chemical symbols. Do not mix the words and the chemical symbols. And also the chemical words and also the chemicals should be well written. The chemical words or the chemicals used should be well written. If not well written, then there's a penalty for that. There's a penalty for that. Dealing with the equations, a good example when you're dealing with equations, like an equation which is going to represent the process of photosynthesis, where the student is required to write the word equation by having the carbon 4 oxide plus water, then that is going to give the student the simple sugars that is in form of glucose and oxygen, all through it should remain to be a word equation. If the student is going then to use the chemical symbols, then all through you're going to have the chemical symbols. All through we're going to have the chemical symbols. A simple mistake is not writing. A simple mistake is not writing the chemicals well. A simple mistake like not writing the chemicals well. We've had the students not being able to write the carbon 4 oxide well, and I'm going to show you what is going to score and what is not going to score. I'm also going to show you the correct chemical words we use, and those ones which became outdated and what we are using currently, so that they don't also mislead you when you're giving or when you're dealing with the question on equations. So let me just show you, like for the carbon dioxide, how you're supposed to write it. There are different ways you're going to get it being written. So I'll show you the correct way to write the carbon dioxide, because it is quite simple and costly when you don't score on this. So check the three ones I've written. The carbon dioxide, the first one is going to score. The second one is not going to score because of the addition of that dot there. That one does not score if it is included in your equation. Then you also have the other carbon dioxide, the last one there, which also does not score. So the correct one would be the first one. And that is a very simple mistake which has been done by the learners. Then I'll also tell you some of the words which have become outdated. We don't use them any longer. Like when we're talking of the carbon dioxide, a student is going to talk about carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide, which we used to call it carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide. In such a case, if the learner goes ahead and talks of carbon dioxide, then it does not score. The correct one, the correct chemical name is the carbon dioxide. Another confusion we also have is when we're talking about carbon 2 oxide, carbon 2 oxide. Carbon 2 oxide is the one we used to refer to as carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide. We also don't score. We also don't score for that. Carbon monoxide, we don't have it. We talk of carbon 2 oxide. So the carbon 2 oxide is going to score. The carbon monoxide is not going to score. So as students, those are some of the simple mistakes which are going to cost you. They're going to cost you in an explanation, like the carbon 2 oxide, which is going to be commonly explained in the question of inhaling the carbon 2 oxide from a burning jiko. Then the student goes ahead in the explanation and talks about the carbon monoxide. So that is not a correct biological name, and we don't agree that. We don't score for that. Another common mistake also we have, another common mistake we have is by using singular and plural, the use of the singular and plural in words, use of singular and plural in words. And examples are like when you have to give in singular and the student goes ahead and gives in plural, that is also going to cost a scoring of the student. Quite simple, a very simple mistake, that one. It's going to cost the student. A good example, if the question is just asking you name part labeled A, and if you look at the part labeled A, the arrow is just pointing on one particular part. If it's just pointing at one particular part, then it should be in singular, unless the parts have been shown severally from the arrows, and the arrows are from one area. Then unless in such a manner, then you're going to give in plural. Mistakes, we've had mistakes. Some of the students don't know some of the words in their singular in plural. A part like mitochondrion, it is when it is one mitochondrion, it is when it is one. Many, they become mitochondria. Many of them are mitochondria. Atrium, we have the atrium in the heart, atrium in the heart, many atria. A flagellum, we have flagellum for locomotion, the flagellum for locomotion, of which it's a common one. We've had it in the past exams. We've had it in the past exams where you have to name just that one part for locomotion, and the learner would give it as flagella. They don't know in singular, it is flagellum. So when there are many flagella, we talk of flagella. Another common one is in the stoma. Stoma is the singular for stomata. The stoma is the singular for stomata. When there are many is when we talk about the stomata. When many, we talk about the stomata. So in such a case, even when you're talking of adding the S for the plural, if you add S and they were not supposed to be many, it's just one, then also that is going to cost the student by not scoring. So with that, those are some of the simple mistakes which we've encountered, and I had to highlight on them to bring it clear to you. Then I'll take you through biological drawings. I'm going to take you through biological drawings. If you encounter a question which is going to require you to draw how to deal with the drawing, I'm going to take you through some of the keynotes when you're making the drawings in biology. So number one, the diagrams must be large enough. They must be large enough. They must be large enough. The diagram must be proportional. That is, all the parts which are shown must be proportional. They must be proportional. They must be proportional. Then when doing the labeling, when doing the labeling of the diagram, you do the labels on the right. The labels to be on the right side. The labels to be on the right side. Labels to be on the right side. I'll show you, I'll guide you on that in a short time. Then something else also on these label lines, the ones we are labeling with, they should be straight lines without an arrow. You don't add an arrow sign at the end of the label. You don't add the label, the arrow sign, sorry. You don't add the arrow sign in a case where you're doing the labeling. Then on the label lines again, they should touch the actual structure. They should touch the actual structure. They should touch the actual structure. Then the label lines also should not cross one another. They should not cross one another. Let me show you on how we're supposed to have the label lines. I'll show you on how to have the label lines. in a case like where you have to make a drawing of the plant cell. You have to make the drawing of a plant cell. You forgive me, the board I'm using is quite slippery. So in such a case, when we are talking about the label lines in a diagram where we have the plant cell, let's work with this. It's much better. So when I'm talking of the label lines, we are saying they should be on the right side. On the right side, this is what we are calling a label line. The label line should not have the arrow sign. It should not have that arrow sign, which is a common mistake done by the student to emphasize on where it is pointing at. So we just need the arrow, we just need the label line itself touching on the actual structure. In such a case, that one is directly pointing or touching on the cell wall. That one is touching on the cell wall. Then again, label lines should not cross one another. Label lines should not cross one another. They shouldn't cross one another. They shouldn't cross one another like this to show the subvacuole there. They shouldn't cross one another. So that one is going to lead to penalizing the learner. We're going to have penalizing the learner. Adhere to what I've told you about the label lines. Adhere to what I've told you about the label lines. Don't include the arrow sign. Don't include the arrow sign. Another key point on the diagrams. Another key point on the diagrams. Another key point on the diagrams. No shading of the diagrams. No shading of the diagrams. Some students will get excited to even add color onto the diagram. We don't shade the diagrams, not even using a pencil. No shading of the diagram. Then another point on the drawings. Another point, if need be, from the questions, a magnification of the drawing should be shown. Magnification of the drawing should be shown. If it is times 10, times 20, and strictly no units for the magnification, strictly no units for the magnification. Another key point is that the outline of the diagram should be a continuous line. It should be a continuous line. The outline of the diagram should be a continuous line. With those keynotes on how to handle the paper, with those keynotes, I'm going to pick some questions. I'm going to pick some questions we had in last year's paper. I'm going to pick some questions we had in last year's paper and guide you on how the student should have given the marks and some of the penalties we had and what led to the students not scoring. I'll highlight some of them. That is last year's paper, and we had a total of 25 questions. And I've told you all questions are compulsory. All questions are compulsory. So I'll guide you on some of the expectations which were to be met for the learner to score. We'll start with question one. Question one, where the learner was to give the characteristics of living organisms. That is from Form 1 work. The first chapter. For the learner to be able to answer question one, they should have known the characteristics of living organisms and know which one would identify, like for one, dressing heavily, the other one on the bursting of the sporangium in the rhizopas species. So the learner had to had in mind, and that is why we are talking of such questions we have in paper one. They need mastery of the content we have in the syllabus. So that is from one work where we talked of the characteristics like nutrition, we talked of reproduction, excretion. For the learner, he had to actually identify which of those characteristics would fit with what you have been given there. Then question two, part A. Question two, part A. Besides venation, state two other external characteristics of leaves that can be used to classify plants. That is also a chapter in Form 1. It's also another chapter we have in Form 1. That is classification 1. Also, the student here had also to know the characteristics we have in leaves. In such a case, we also apply classification 1 in classification 2. Classification 1, we also apply it in classification 2, mostly when we are dealing with the dichotomous key. In such a case, the student should have known of the parts of the leaves and characteristics. In such a case, like when you're talking about a part like the margin, we have different types of the margins, which could have been smooth, which could have been serrated, dentate. Another one is a characteristic based on the leaf apex, of which they also vary. Could be a sharp, pointed, could be rounded, could be a bilobed. Like there's another question which is also going to apply classification 1. As we go on ahead, you're going to see that question. The learner or the student also should have also known on the types of leaves we have. Is it a simple? Is it a compound leaf? Is it a simple or a compound leaf? We also talk of characteristics like the leaf color, where we have the variegated ones. We also have the non-variegated ones. We go to part B of the question. Explain why the bat is classified as a mammal, yet it flies. Again, also that one is in classification 2, Form 3 work, whereby also the student here would have been having or recalling the characteristics of the mammals, which one apply to this one, except that it flies. What other characteristics are going to apply to this one? Like if we're talking of the presence of the mammary glands, the body covered with fur. So the student had to recall characteristics of a mammal. We have question 3. And if you have noted, also question 2 on explaining. We also have questions on explanation in paper 1. It's not all about just naming, stating. We have a major change also in paper 1, explaining, which also went with 2 marks. We also have question 3. You can see that neuron there. Well, that is from 4 work. that is in the response and coordination chapter. Part A of the question would ask the student to name the cell. The learner here would have talked specifically on what type of a cell it was, specifically of which it is a motor neuron. It is a motor neuron. The student also would score if they identified the cell as a nerve cell. A nerve cell would also have scored a nerve cell. But when we go to specifically what type of a nerve cell it is, it would be a motor cell, motor nerve cell. Then part B, we have part B of that, state two ways in which the cell is structurally adapted to its function. Two ways in which the cell is structurally adapted to its function. That is where now also the student would need to know the parts of the neuron, the parts of the nerve cell, and how structurally they are adapted to their function. So they would have to identify the various parts, where we have the cell body, we have the myelin sheath, we have the nodes of Ranvier. The student should have highlighted on that. Number 4, we have an example of the practical-oriented question. Question 4, we had a practical-oriented question. We have that set up there at the beginning, at the end. We have that set up. Then part A, the student was to name the physiological process being investigated. That is from the setup. The learner would needed to look at the setup so that to be able to identify what type of process was being investigated. We have part G, which majorly would give a clue to the learner, part G. Then we also have the different solutions. We have solution E in the beginning. We have solution F. So the changes that we had at the end for the second diagram would also have led to giving the learner a clue on what type of process was being investigated. Part B of the question account for the observation made at the end of the experiment. In such a case, I've said where we have a question asking you to account for, you account based on what has been observed. You go ahead and explain from the observation which has been made. Like in such a case, the observation which was made for the student maybe to account, you can see that solution E was hypertonic, F was hypotonic, so that would make it now even to reduce in size when you look at the second part. So in such a case, we have a decrease in volume of a solution F. By the end, the experiment is over, solution F, we have a decrease in the volume. So we are accounting of why did we have that decrease in level for solution F. And the student had to highlight that by talking about hypertonic solution. Which of the two was hypertonic? Which one was hypotonic? And the process which was involved in the movement. The process which was involved in the movement that would lead to the student scoring 3 marks. Then we have identity of G, which is the semi-permeable membrane. We could also score for visking tubing. In such a case, all in that leading the student that it was osmosis. Then we have question 5. We have question 5, explain why significantly increasing the blood pH slows down the rate of selective reabsorption of materials in the kidney tubules. This is a question which was also talking about the selective reabsorption in the kidney tubules. The student also had to know why we have that effect of the pH and what the pH was affecting, and why did we have also the increase in the the rate of the selective reabsorption slowing down. So the effect of the pH could have been brought to show that it affected also the respiratory enzymes which were working, and that also affected the permeability of the kidney tubules. Then we have question 6. We have question 6. Question 6, name the respiratory structure in the amoeba. That is also form 2 work. That is form 2 work. Form 2 work in gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange. Then part B, give a reason for your answer in A above, a reason for the answer. Students, this is now what we call a tied question. This is a tied question where part B is tied to part A. Part B is tied to part A. The answer you give in B depends on what you have written in A. For example, if this student would have not given the correct answer, if they would have talked of the gills in A, and they come and give the correct answer also in B, that one also is going to disqualify the mark because the identity was not done well in part A. So giving the wrong answer in part A is going to disqualify the student also in B. And I said in such a case where we have the tied questions, for part A, if the student is not quite sure about the answer for part A, you just leave it blank. Go ahead and score for part B if you're sure about it. That one we don't refuse because A has been left blank. So that is an example of a tied question. Then we go to question 7, question on distinguishing. And I had started with telling you the words and what they expect you to tell us. Distinguishing, it said that distinguishing is going to expect you giving the uniqueness between the two. And in such a case, we are talking about chemical and mechanical digestion, chemical and mechanical digestion, whereby in such a case, the student would have highlighted for chemical digestion, we're going to have the involvement of the enzymes. We have the enzymes involved in the breaking down of the food materials or the substances. Then talking of mechanical digestion, this one would actually would have been highlighted by the student talking about the chewing, mastication, that is chewing to break down the food into smaller food particles, whereas for the chemical we had the enzymes actively working on the food substances. On the same question on distinguishing, for the student to score the 1 mark, they should also have brought out the difference quite well between the two, between chemical and mechanical. Some students would argue out, what if they had written about the chemical digestion well, or if they explained about mechanical digestion well and they didn't do it for the chemical digestion. Some students would argue out of getting half a mark in such a case, and which that one does not apply. That is not going to apply to get a half a mark. To score the 1 mark, the student should have brought out the uniqueness between chemical and mechanical digestion. That scores 1 mark. It doesn't matter if you have scored for one and the other one you didn't get it right. That one is not still going to end up not scoring unless you do it for both. Then the next question, we have question 8, role of the following. Just simple as that, giving the role of the following mucus in the respiratory system. That is also under gaseous exchange. The cartilage rings. Just the role, that is just what was asked, not even just the adaptations or what, the epiglottis, the role it plays. That one was quite direct like that. Then we have question 9. We have that list there. We have the list there. Part A state two observable features that adapt the leaf to gaseous exchange. The key words in that question are two. You can see it has been highlighted. Then observable for a student to also know on how to handle that. What would also have led them is to highlight observable, what the student was able to see in that leaf, what was to be seen at that time, not just what you have in the notes. So the student had to score from just giving the two observable features from the leaf, which is drawn there. Then part B of the question, part B, let me take you to part A. Part A, some students would go ahead and now talk of what we don't have there and talk of some other points we have in the book, and that one, they didn't score on it. Then we go to part B. Part B, explain the relationship between photosynthesis and aerobic respiration within the leaf, the relationship between the two. This also was quite tricky for some students. The question was on explaining, and to be able to explain on the two words, photosynthesis and the aerobic respiration and their relationship, the student also should have also had an idea on what photosynthesis requires, what the process of photosynthesis requires for it to happen, and what are some of the products we get in photosynthesis. The same case also for the aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration, which is going to use the products we are going to get in photosynthesis. So in such a case, like for photosynthesis, it's going to use the carbon dioxide, and as an end product, we have the oxygen. The same oxygen we get from the photosynthesis would also have applied to be used in aerobic respiration, which again is going to produce the carbon dioxide, again to be used by the plant to carry out the process of photosynthesis. So the student had to tackle it from that point. Then we have question 10. We have that setup. That is also another question, experimental question. We have it. You can see the questions are getting more on explaining. So in question 10, we have that setup. Then part A, explain how inclusion of the following components would affect the mouse in the experiment. So we have light. What role would the light be playing there? You can see we have the arrows pointing on the source of light. For the light, it would be a very good raw material for the process of photosynthesis for the potted plant. So the student had to bring that out. Then we also have the sodium hydroxide solution there below there near the mouse where we have it. These sodium hydroxide on how it would absorb the carbon dioxide. And remember, the carbon dioxide is the one which is needed by the same plant for the process of photosynthesis. Then part B, why they prefer the bell jar and not a tin box. That is clearly to allow the penetration of light. If they would have used a tin box, then we wouldn't have the plant getting light for photosynthesis. The question was a bit complex for some students to internalize it and also to interpret it. Then we have the next question. We have question 11. Question 11, we have A. Again, it's also another question on explaining. Quite heavy on marks, 3 marks, part A, 3 marks, part B. Mostly we would have such questions in paper 2, but nowadays we also have the integration in paper 1. So we have part A, releasing of the little sportsmen, releasing little concentrated urine at the end of a strenuous exercise. That one also would also be talking about the process of excretion, We have it in excretion, and in such a question, the student would also have talked of the sweating. we have the sweating. We also have the effect of the ADH affecting permeability. So we would have more reabsorption of water, And at the end of it all, the sportmen lose water through the sweating. Then we also have the selective reabsorption, where we have more of the tubules reabsorbing much of the water, at the end of it all, then getting the concentrated urine. That question had the 3 scoring points, and the learner had to bring out them quite well. Then we have part B. We have part B. Part B, a rabbit has a higher oxygen demand than a camel. A camel, that is a question on bringing out size. We have size. Here comparing the size of a rabbit and a camel, and also we are talking about the aspect of surface area, how surface area to volume ratio, and how it goes with the size. So in such a case, the learner, the student, would have brought out the size of the rabbit being small and having a large surface area to volume ratio in comparison to the camel. And that we also had the 3 scoring points. Then we have question 12. We have that question 12. Again, another experimental question. Part A, identify the metabolic process and investigation. The metabolic process which was being investigated there. So we had some aspects the learner to look at, or to also guide them in giving the answer. We had lime water. We also have some plants which are in water, And then the setup was to be monitored for 48 hours. So looking at that, it would have led to the student talking about the process of respiration, Then another question, B, account for the observations, quite also another question which is heavy on marks, 2 marks, account for the observation made in the test tube at the end of the investigation. Again, the answer for that, for part B, would have also been drawn from what the student has observed, from the observation the student did, then goes ahead. The student goes ahead to explain on that and why what happened. That, like in this case, we had the lime water forming white precipitate. So the accounting would explain on what happened for that to happen. What happened for that to happen? We go to question. So that was on from 2 work, question 12 from 2 work on respiration. Then we have next question 13. We have question 13, question on genetics. We also have bit of reproduction. It is on genetics. Give a total number. That is quite clear for the student to give the total number. Just that, no explanation, no giving a reason. It was just giving the number. Then part B, explaining the possible cause of the condition. If the student was quite clever on that, they would have known what we are talking about here. We are in mutation. We are talking about non-disjunction, where we have the extra chromosomes. So part B expected the student to explain on the cause of that condition. The condition that is the Klinefelter's condition, which we have it in the females, in such a case having the extra sex chromosome and ending up having XXX. So that would explain on that. Then part C would also need also the student to know about the characteristics which would be seen in an individual who has the Klinefelter's condition, just stating 2 physical characteristics. We go to question 14. Just a minute. Question 14, part A. Part A, again, quite heavy on marks. How many marks? We have 3 marks there. We have 3 marks on explaining why fossil records as evidence of organic evolution are usually incomplete, why they are usually incomplete. That is a question from the form 4 work on evolution. That is on evolution, and the student had to explain why, when we are using the fossils as an evidence, where they are usually incomplete, where they would bring out points like talking of the being distorted maybe by natural. We also have natural effects, also eaten by the scavengers, or some of them also would have had soft parts which would not also fossilize. So such are the points which we expected in such. There was also an error in the student answering such a question, where some students would go directly to giving the limitations of using the fossils, but that is a quite a different one, limitations of using the fossils. The question is so complete from that, and we had that challenge. Then we go to part B of the question. Name the evidence of organic evolution exhibited by occurrence of similar amino acid molecules in a range of organisms. Again, that is also another question from evolution. Question 15 part A. It's a question again on distinguishing. I had used this also example on guttation and transpiration, and to repeat on it again, I said that we have to bring out the uniqueness of the two terms, guttation and the transpiration. I talked of how the water is lost and in what form the water is lost. You have to talk about the two cases for guttation and transpiration. We also have to talk about parts where the processes are taking place to bring out the difference between the two, and that when well done, it would score 1 mark. Again, I repeat, we don't have scoring alone for guttation if it is correct and not correct for transpiration. If it is correct for transpiration and not for guttation, again, no scoring. The 1 mark is going to score when we do both. When you do both clearly, that is when you're going to have the scoring of 1 mark. Then we go to part B. Part B, we have the significance of transpiration. Again, that is also in that chapter in Form 2. That is in Form 2. We are talking about the first chapter on transport. So the significance of that was quite direct for the student. Then next we have question 16. We have question 16. State 2 benefits of mutation in living organisms. Mutation which is covered in genetics in Form 4 work. That was also clear for the student. Then we have this other question, question number 17, where we have those two photographs of the 2 dogs. We have the photographs of the 2 dogs, where the student had to explain the reason for the difference. The reason for the difference in the length of their fur. Looking quite clearly for the first one, the student would have seen it is quite hairy compared to the second one. And this also was also to bring out the concept of geographical distribution. That is again on the evidences of evolution. So they had to bring out that concept of geographical distribution, and also the adaptation of the 2 dogs in their different environments, and how the adaptation enables them to survive in their environments. Definitely for the hairy one, we'd see it would be in a cold area compared to the one which does not have the thick fur, which is not in a cold area. So the student, to score on the 2 marks, had to bring out that and explain on how having the thicker hair for the first dog is going to enable it to survive in the cold areas, because it is helping in insulation. Then we have the next question, that is question 18, name type of tooth in carnivores mainly used for piercing and killing of the prey. That one is in form 1 work, the last chapter, that is in nutrition. That was quite clear for the student. Then question 19, it also had another diagram. We have another diagram in question 19. Below is a diagram of the human digestive system. Human digestive system. So part A, that question is from Form 1 work. Form 1 work, again, the last chapter, nutrition in plants and animals. And the student, to be able to answer the question, should have been aware and having knowledge on the human alimentary canal, the digestive system, all the parts. So part A, the student was to label with Y. Using letter Y, they were to label where enzyme amylase is produced, where the amylase is produced. And that would have the 2 marks where the amylase is produced, would have the 2 marks. So in such a case, the student would have the label on the mouth. We would have it on the mouth of that person and label it Y, and label it Y. Then we would also have the other one pointing out there, pancreas. On the pancreas, we would have the pancreatic juice, having the pancreatic amylase. That one would have it there. Then part B, besides the digestive role, explain one other function of the part labeled H. The student also, sorry, let me take you back again to A on what the student also would have done for A. They would also have stroked H. As the second arrow, they would have stroked H with Y. That is the part pointing on their pancreas. So they would also show it using letter Y. Then in B again, explain one other function of the part labeled H. They would give the other functions of the pancreas, other functions apart from the releasing of the enzyme. We would also have the student bringing out the function on releasing of the hormones, the insulin. We have the insulin, the glucagon. That one, they would bring that out. So that would help in the regulation of the blood sugar levels. That was quite clear for the student. Then we go to question 20. Question 20. State how each of the following features enhance efficient movement of fish in water. We are talking about the scale that is in a chapter in Form 4, where we have the subtopic about locomotion in a fish. We have locomotion in a fish. We also have that content covered in a chapter in Form 4. So here we have the scale. The student would have talked about the scales, how they face backwards, and also how that helps to reduce friction when it is moving in water. Then its body shape again, body shape also could have talked about how it has a streamlined body. Could also talk about the head of the fish and how they help, how the shape helps in the movement in water. Then we have question 21. We have question 21. Make a diagram of a simple bilobed leaf with a serrated margin. This also was also to test on again if the student also knows about these characteristics, as I talked about, then we have them in classification 1. We have them in classification 1. So in such a case, let me lead you on how the student was to score on such a question. I'll just make a drawing and show you on what was expected for the keywords of simple, bilobed, and serrated. So the features here which would score number one. Number one, we have the simple leaf. This is a simple leaf. Then we have the serration. We have the serration. Said you forgive on the drawing, the board is quite slippery. So this one would have the scoring at that point on the serration. Then we also have on it being bilobed at this point here. Oh, sorry for that. So we would have one for the serration of the leaf, a point. We would have it there. We would have another one for being bilobed, and the other one for the leaf being a simple one. So in such a case, the student to guide on answering such a question, they would have the keywords underlined as simple, that is one, bilobed, that is another feature, then the serrated margin. In such a case, then we would have them scoring the 3 marks. We would have the scoring of the 3 marks. It was as simple as that. And then you also remember the keynotes I've given you on following on the biological drawings, Next, we look at the next question. The next question, 22. We have that chart there. Identify the gas Q, part A. Identify gas Q. So it's all a matter of just knowing what gas the student would know, the gas which they would know, which would combine with the hemoglobin to give them carboxyhemoglobin. That is what would give the identity of Q. Then part B, explain the advantage of oxyhemoglobin. Explain the advantage oxyhemoglobin has over carboxyhemoglobin. Then in such a case, for the student to answer on that, they had to know about the oxyhemoglobin being unstable, being an unstable compound. Therefore, it dissociates easily. The dissociation is the one which gives it the ability of releasing the hemoglobin to pick on more oxygen, and supply to the body parts. Then that one is the one which would make it more of an advantage over the carboxyhemoglobin, which is a stable compound. It's a stable compound, and it doesn't dissociate easily. So it does not release the hemoglobin to pick on oxygen. So that one, that explanation would score 2 marks. Then next, we have next question 23, where we have state 3 homeostatic roles of the liver. 3 homeostatic roles of the liver. The question here had to know that we have the homeostatic roles, and also we have the excretory roles. So they had to know the difference between the homeostatic ones and the excretory ones to be able to score on that. It was quite clear on that. Then we have the next question on Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium ovale, which are transmitted by a mosquito. You state with a reason whether the two organisms can interbreed. In such a case, that is the taxonomic units, that is in also classification. In classification 1 in Form 2 work, that again also testing on recalling on the taxonomic units all the way from a kingdom to species. And in such two given names, the learner had to know which one is the genus, which one also is the species, to be able to know whether the two organisms could interbreed. Next, we have part B, explain evolutionary basis for the ever-changing drugs for malaria treatment. That also is a question in Form 4. Form 4, that is on genetics. It is in genetics there where we are talking about the mutation. That one which has led to the resistance. It has led to the resistance. So that one we had to talk about the mutation, how it brought about the change in the genetic constitution, and thus bringing the resistance in drugs. Again, that had 2 marks. Then we have question 25. Question 25. State one characteristic of muscles responsible for each of the following. A, peristaltic movement, and B, we have movement of limbs. That is Form 4. We have Form 4, the last chapter on support. In such a case, the student here was to be able to know about the different muscles that we have, the different muscles. We have the smooth, we have the cardiac muscles, and also the skeletal ones. So to be able to answer that, they had to know the characteristics which we have, and where each is going to apply for A and also for B. That is the paper we had for the last year's students. And you can see how the questions have been changing as the time moves. If you go through the paper, you have seen that we have many questions dealing with explaining, and also you have seen that we also have the most of the questions being experimental ones, not usually like we had the paper 1 before, quite not having much content. So the times have changed. So as students, I will tell you, you be ready for anything. Be ready for any setup to be in paper 1. And I've told you in the introduction that paper 1 is going to have all the chapters. All the chapters are going to be covered in paper 1. So I'll not lead you like we do in other subjects we may have for paper 1 and paper 2. So this strictly is going to entail all the chapters in the syllabus. So you have to cover all the way from Form 1 to Form 4. And that is what I had for you today. So I request we move to the question session so that we can tackle a few issues that you may have encountered in answering the questions.
Okay, now we are going to have the question and answer session, and we'd like to have the questions from the schools. Kindly, I request you to have your hands up if you have questions. Kindly, we have to get questions from the schools. Okay. Hapa Kitanga, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Hapa Kitanga. Hapa Kitanga. Hapa Kitanga, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Okay, let us have another question from Mua Girls. Mua Girls, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Mua Girls, kindly unmute your microphone.
Okay. My question is, if you are given a tight question and to leave part A blank and to answer part B as you have said, are you going to score the marks for part B or not? While leaving the
I do it. Okay, that is, I gave that option for the tied questions. I gave that for the tied questions, and I've given you an example which we've had in last year's paper. I said if you are not sure of what to answer in part A, you're going to leave it a blank because it is also going to cost you for the scoring in part B, which you have answered correctly. So that is only going to apply in that case. So if you leave it blank, that is, we have an omission mark at that point. And if your part B is correctly stated, then you're going to score for that. I hope I'm clear on that. You're going to score for part B.
Okay, let us have another question from Katalembu Center of Excellence. Kindly, Katalembu, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My name is Abubakar from Center of Excellence. My question is, will you get it wrong if you did not label the state when you write an equation like water, if you did not state like liquid? Another question is the difference between plasma and tissue fluid. And another question is, when labeling diagram, we are supposed to label with a pen or a pencil.
Let me go and answer on the first one. You are asking if you're supposed to name is it the status of the reactants when you are writing the equation. You don't need to go ahead and state whether they are in gaseous form or they are in liquid form. We don't need that. That is too much of involvement. We have that in chemistry. We just need the equation as it is. If it is a word, you let it go as a word equation all through. If it is a chemical equation, then you're going to have now the chemical equation all through. We don't need to have the status of the reactants which have been used. Then you are also asked, you've also asked on the labeling, The labeling, you're going to have the label lines in pencil, but at the parts you're going to have them named in biro pen. You're going to use a biro pen for that. The other question you've also asked, we're talking about the tissue fluid, and you are also talking about the tissue fluid and the lymph fluid. We have the tissue fluid, which has all the substances being removed, and it doesn't have the cells, the blood cells. It doesn't have the blood cells. It is going to remain after the ultra filtration. Then the other one, you're talking about the lymph fluid which you're going to have in the lymphatic system. That is what we are going to have for both of them.
Okay, let us have another question from Kwandanza Secondary School. Kindly, Kwandanza, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Okay, I'm Stephen from Kwandanzi School. My question is, are abbreviations accepted in biology? For example, DNA for deoxyribonucleic acid or LH for luteinizing hormone. Thank you.
Okay, let me answer that. I think I skipped on that. That is a very key one. It is a very key one. We don't give the abbreviations. They don't score. A very common mistake, we have it in rating of the adenosine triphosphate, where the students are going to write as ATP. We don't score for that. Even when you are writing for if you are handling even in paper 3 where we have those chemical reagents like we have for HCl dilute, most of the students would write dial HCl. No, we don't score for the abbreviations, so you should have them written in full. All of them, you write them in full what it stands for. Thank you.
Let us have another question from Chemudeke. Kindly, Chemudeke, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My question is, if like in a question where you are asked to give more than 1 point, if you are allowed to number the points. Yeah.
Yes, yes, numbering of points is quite crucial. It is going to lead the examiner on your priority of the answers that you have given. I give an example. If the answers are not numbered and then you go ahead and have even extra points, put it in mind that I've said that the marking is going to take place from left to right, not downwards, unless you have guided the examiner by numbering. Then the examiner is going to do the marking from upwards going downwards, the way you have numbered the points.
Okay, let us have another question from Chambuko Secondary School. Kindly, Chambuko, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Thank you. My first question, when you are asked to give characteristics of living organisms and you answer in prose form, are you penalized? My second one, when you are told to differentiate and you use double T format, are you penalized?
Yes, let me answer on that. Is asking if we have the differences in a table format. That is quite clear. That is quite okay. If we would use a table to bring out the differences and make sure that what you are giving the differences for, you have labeled on one side and on the other side, that is quite okay. You're going to score on that. That question was on. Kindly come again for that other question. Come again. Come again. I've answered the differentiating one. It's okay if you use a table. Yes.
Yeah. The other one was when you are asked to give characteristics of living organisms and you write in prose form, are you penalized?
You're not going to be penalized, but it's good. It's a question on having the characteristics, and it's all about just stating. You just have them in point form. You're not going to be penalized for the way you have given them, but it's good you have them in point form. Next, Mongala. Can we have from Mongala? Mongala.
Kindly, Mongala, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Yes, I'm Dennis from Mungala. My questions are, why is a bat classified as a mammal yet it flies? My second question is, distinguish between glutation and transpiration. Thank you.
Let me go through that, as we had also we have also done it in the paper. Guttation and transpiration, if you refer to your form to work. When we are talking about guttation, we are talking about the loss of water from the plants in form of water droplets, and that is going to be through special structures which are called the hydrathodes. While when we talk about the transpiration, transpiration is going to be the loss of water in form of the water vapor that is through the plant leaves, And I said this when I was talking on that question of distinguishing. Just get back to your notes and get the uniqueness of the two words. Then the other question is also asking, I think I had also elaborated as I was going through the paper. Please don't make a repetition, because I've highlighted what the student was to give in that question, where the bat is going to be a mammal and yet it flies. I gave reasons like the body is covered with fur. I also said that also it has the mammary glands. Such are some of the points I gave in such a question. And I told you that the student is also going to score in such a case, but it was just tricky adding the word yet it flies. But what are some of the other features the bat is going to have? Thank you.
Okay, let us have another question from Kasinga Secondary School. Kindly, Kasinga, unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kasinga, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Yes, Kasinga.
My question is on magnification. When you draw drawings on biology, is it a must you work out magnification? Are you penalized if you don't?
No, magnification is not a necessity for all the questions, unless for all the drawings, unless you have a question which accompanies your diagram, which is going to ask you to state the magnification depending on what you have drawn.
Okay, let us have another question from Vota Secondary School. Kindly, Vota, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My question is about the neurons. How am I supposed to indicate the direction of neurons? Is it upward or up the diagram or below or the sideways? And also the other question is about practical paper 3. If I'm asked to draw any diagram or any presentation, how am I supposed to find or to calculate the magnification, or I'm not supposed to do so? Thank you.
Okay, part A, you are asking about the neurons. When you have a question which is asking you to show the direction of the impulse, where you can have it, the arrow, you can have it on the top. You wouldn't also be penalized if you have it also below that diagram. The key point or the scoring part of that question is when you have to show the arrow. The arrow is the one which is going to show the direction from which the impulses are flowing from and to where. The other question you are asking about paper 3, about the drawing. Come again, please, about the drawing in paper 3. That was Vota. Again, what was it for paper 3?
Oh, I was asking if it is a must or mandatory for me to find or to calculate first the magnification or after I've drawn my diagram.
If the question is going to require you to work out on the magnification, you're going to do it. But now this is different from what we have in paper 3. If you have that drawing, if it was a leaf which was provided, then you're going to show you have drawn it to what magnification. That one you have to indicate next to the drawing which you have. I think that matters so much in paper 3. But for now, we are dealing just with the paper 1. I'm not going to give you the highlights for paper 3, kindly.
Okay, let us have another question from St. Bernard. Kindly, St. Bernard, unmute your microphone and ask your question. St. Bernard, kindly ask your question. St. Bernard, kindly ask your question. St. Bernard. Okay, we move to AIC Kimakimwe. AIC Kimakimwe, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Faith, I was asking, suppose I give my answer in symbols. Let's say I wrote carbon dioxide in symbols. Will I be penalized for that? Thank you.
Yes, you're going to be penalized for that. Write in full carbon dioxide. You're not going to show or indicate it using the chemical symbol. That one you're going not to score.
Okay, let us have another question from Machakos Baptist. Machakos Baptist, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Machakos Baptist, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
I was asking, how do you write the word pH?
The word?
pH. Are they supposed to be in a line or in the same letters?
pH, the P is a small one. P is small, the H is a capital.
Okay, let us have another question from Chanda Secondary School. Kindly, Chanda, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
So I was asking, if you are being told to describe the flow of water from the roots to the other parts of the plant, can you use a well-labeled diagram and get all the marks?
No. The question is on describing. The diagram is only going to support. The diagram is only going to support your explanation. So you cannot describe only by referring to the diagram to give the flow. And that one would be quite a complex question for paper 1, all the way from the roots to all other parts. It's going to be quite complex for paper 1.
Another question.
Another question. I got another question.
Yes.
One molecule of lipid gives more energy than one molecule of glucose when respired aerobically, but it is not always used as a respiratory substrate. Give 2 reasons for this.
You're talking about lipids. They're the ones which are going to give us a lot of energy once they undergo the process of respiration, but we don't use it. We don't use them as substrates. The reason, number 1, they are going to require a lot of oxygen for them to be broken down. They require a lot of oxygen for them to be broken down to release the energy. Then also, apart from that, the lipids are going only to be used in times when the body has exhausted all that it has. So we have them as backup, and we don't just use them easily as the available substrates. So we have them as backup in times when the body does not have any other substrates to use.
Okay, let us have another question from Kiteini Secondary School. Kindly, Kiteini, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Jessica from Kiteni. My question is on genetics. When you have been taught to cross and then you fail to indicate the phenotype and the genotype of the same, and on the crossing, you have got everything correct, are you going to be penalized on the same or not? Another question is why the camel has a nephron, a big nephron, than whale. Well, thank you.
Okay, let me start with the genetics question. If you don't indicate the phenotypes, the genotypes, then you're not going to score. Those are quite crucial. We start all the way from the phenotype, then to the genotype, then you come to the gametes. You have to have them in order. If you don't have them the way the phenotypes are supposed to be stated and the genotypes, even if you have the cross sign and all other parts are correctly done, then you don't score on that. That is an omission you have made. Then you are asking about the camel also having a larger nephron compared to the whale. In such a case, to handle such a question, you have to know the habitats of the two organisms. For the camel, where it is a dry area, so water is a problem. So that helps it in conservation of water. While for the whale, you know, it's aquatic, it is in water. So for it, water is not a problem. So for the whale, actually for it needs to not to reabsorb much water because it doesn't need it.
Okay, let us have another question from Muvuti Girls. Muvuti Girls, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Muvuti Girls, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Yes, Muvuti.
My question is, when asked to calculate.
Yes, Muvuti.
When asked to calculate magnification and you omit the formula of the magnification and I work out arriving at the correct answer, do I get penalized or I get a mark?
In such a question, it's going to be tricky. You're going to consider the marks which have been given. Other times, if such a question is having like 3 marks, you'd find that 1 mark has been.
Muvuti Girls, kindly mute your microphone.
In such a case where you have a question on the, what was it? I've forgotten. Come up again, please. Magnification, sorry, it is on magnification. If you have such a question on magnification, you're going to consider the total marks which have been given. Other marks may spread out to the formula. They may spread out to the formula. But if a question, for example, it is only having 2 marks, the 2 marks are going to fall. The first one falls on the working out. Then the other one is going to apply to the answer which has been given. If you get, like, for example, 3 marks, then you are going to know that also the formula was catered for to score a mark. So it is going to depend on how many marks have been given.
Okay, let us have another question from Upper Kitanga. Kindly, Upper Kitanga, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My question is, if you are drawing a diagram, should you use a pencil or a pen?
For the drawing, we use a pencil. Strictly we use a pencil, please.
Let us have another question from Chani Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My name is Karen Eva Pearson. Can you elaborate on the question about physiological process? You say because osmosis and not dilution, and here the level of water drops.
You're not clear, please. You're not clear. You're not audible.
Kindly, Chani, be more audible.
Chani, you're not audible. I didn't get the question.
Can you elaborate on the question about physiological process? You said it's osmosis and not diffusion, and there the level of water drops.
The level of what? And yet
water
the level of
dropped.
Water dropped.
Yes.
The level of water, that question which we had in last year's exam?
Yes.
Are you talking about that question?
Yes.
Yeah, what about it? The question was about the solutions. We had the one which was hypertonic, the other one hypotonic. And I said we also had the what? The cell, the semi-permeable membrane. So checking on how the experiment was at the beginning and how it ended. That was to lead you to tell you what process was happening. When we talk of osmosis, it is going to be strictly talking about the movement of the water molecules. We only talk about the water molecules. And for these molecules to move, one, they have to be in a hypotonic solution, hypotonic solution, and then they're going to move now to a hypertonic solution. And then we had also that semi-permeable membrane there, down there, which also was to facilitate the movement of the water molecules.
Okay, let us have another question from Metuma Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask a question. Metuma.
In definition and differentiation of terms, do we have specific terms which should be indicated? Then my question 2, is there any link or connection between paper 1, 2, and 3? Thank you.
Let me come again and ask you about the link. What link are you talking about between paper 1, 2, and 3? Are you talking about the link in getting the total mark, or what linkage are you referring to? Metuma?
The setting of the exam?
Yes.
For instance,
yes.
Yes. I have done a revision in a paper 2 of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And the type of questions in paper 1, topics which have been tested in paper 1.
Come
the
again.
topics, but I'm saying
yes. There's a lot of noise in your
the questions in paper 1.
The questions in paper 1.
Check on
the
your
questions
back.
in paper 1.
Yes.
The chapters which have been set in paper 1.
Yes.
Those chapters can also be set in paper 2 and 3.
Yes.
But in a long questions.
Oh,
I have seen something.
Yes, yes. As I started, I said we don't have any specific topics or chapters for paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. What is making the difference is on the types of questions to expect. Like I've given you what we have in paper 1. Paper 2, you know what to expect, even the essay bit of it. Paper 3, much of the practical work. And all, we have also some chapters which are in paper 3. So we have a link, and we don't have specific chapters for paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. What we have in paper 1 could also be repeated in paper 2 in a different way. I hope I'm clear with that. The first question, I didn't get it, please. Kindly come again with the first question. The first question, please. Metuma, the first question.
Definition and differentiation. Do we have specific and differentiation?
Yes. Do we have what? Metuma. Metuma, do we have
specific the differentiation to distance, emotion, and perception?
A difference in definition and differentiation. Metuma, difference in definition
specific
and
terms which should differentiation of terms.
No. In fact, when you define, and then you also get another question on differentiation, the same words, you are also going to use them when you are also giving the difference between two terms. It's also the same one which you also use to define. The difference now when it comes to differentiating, it's because you have two items. Am I clear on that? Next.
Okay. let us have another question from Muvuti Boys High School. Kindly, Muvuti, unmute your microphone and ask your question. Muvuti Boys, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Muvuti Boys, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Okay, I'm moving to Changuli. Changuli Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
My question is, I have two questions. The first one is, name the hormone that inhibits the secretion of gastric juice. And the other one is, can you give the benefits of mutation?
Let me start with the second one, the benefits of mutation, whereby mutation is going to bring out the variation. It's going to bring out variation. In other ways, the variation may be beneficial. It may be beneficial to the organism. The next question you are asking about what? The other question? The other question?
We have some other questions, but the other one is, name an hormone that inhibits the secretion of gastric juice.
The one which inhibits?
Yes.
Kindly let me refer on that shortly, please.
Okay, let us have another question from Kiteini Secondary School. Kindly, Kiteini, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Question from Kiteini.
Yes.
It's on genetics. When you
Yes.
are told, yet you are not to use the fusion lines or the Punnett square. What are you supposed to do? Is it better someone to use the...
Start again, come again, please.
I'm asking when you are told to cross.
Yes.
Yet you are not told to use the fusion lines.
Yes.
Or the Punnett square.
Yes.
Is it better someone to use the one of the two methods?
In a genetic crossing, it's either you're going to use the Punnett square or the crossing lines, or the genetic crossings where we use the lines. So unless the question is asking you specifically to use the Punnett square, that is the time you're going to use the Punnett square. But if the question goes ahead and tells you to make a crossing and it is not specific, then you can also use either. But if it is specific on the Punnett, let it be strictly, you give the answer using the Punnett. Unless otherwise, then it's either a Punnett or the genetic crossing. Which one?
Okay, let us have another question from Muvuti. Muvuti, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Muvuti Boys High School. Muvuti Boys, kindly ask your question. Muvuti Boys. Muvuti Boys, kindly ask your question. Muvuti Boys, kindly ask your question. Okay, we move to Kitanga. Upper Kitanga, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Yes, my question is, Can you answer question using diagrams? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I'm asking whether you can answer a question in diagrams for example, in blood clotting.
Yes. You use the chart? Yes. In such a case, you can go ahead instead of doing the discussing or outlining the whole process. You can have the chart, but flowing well with the arrows showing what is happening at what stage. That is okay.
Okay, let us have another question from Chanda Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Chanda Secondary School. Let's have some order, kindly.
Okay, suggest why there are 3 semicircular canals in each ear. Then the second one, name part of the ear, eye, that has a corresponding function to the cochlea of the ear. Explain your answer.
The second question, you are asking what is having, come again, please. What is corresponding to what?
Name the part of the eye that has a corresponding function of the cochlea of the ear. Explain your answer.
Cochlea of the ear. What in the eye we have corresponding to that is the part we call the retina, because that is where we have the sight. That is where you're going to have the sight, where the light rays are going to be sent to that for vision to take place. And to explain on that, the cochlea also in the ear is the part which is used for hearing. So the explanation there is it's because those two parts are the ones which have the functions of those two organs. Those are the main parts which carry out the functions of the two parts. Then the other one, you're asking about what? Semicircular canals, why we have the 3 semicircular canals. These canals are the ones which contain the fluids. We have the endolymph, the perilymph, and that is going to assist in the process of balancing. It assists in the process of balancing.
Okay, let us have another question from Mua Girls High School. Kindly, Mua Girls High School, unmute your microphone and ask your question. Mua Girls, kindly let's have some order.
Okay, I have a question. I'm Tracy from Moore Hills. How are leaves of submerged plants adapted for photosynthesis?
How leaves of? Come again, leaves of what?
Submerged plants.
Of what, sorry?
Submerged.
Submerged plants. How the leaves, they do what?
They're adapted for photosynthesis.
How they are adapted to photosynthesis. In some of these submerged plants, you're going to have the leaves exposed. They're going to be exposed for them to be able to get light to enable the process of photosynthesis.
Okay, let us have another question from St. Valentine's. Kindly, St. Valentine's, unmute your microphone and ask your question. St. Valentine's. St. Valentine's, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. St. Valentine's, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. St. Valentine's, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Okay, we move to Katoloni Secondary School. Kindly, Katoloni, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
The examiner, the question goes like this. The enzymes pepsin and pepsin are secreted in their inactive forms. Explain why they are secreted in these inactive forms.
Yes, the reason why they are secreted in their inactive forms is that if they would end up being in the active form, then they would start also reacting to those parts which are releasing them. So that is why we have them first being in the inactive form, and then now they have to be converted to the active form. So that prevents having to start on working on the food substrate and also the parts which they are being secreted from.
Okay, there is a question from Chanda Secondary School, and they are asking, suggest why there are 3 semicircular canals in each ear.
Chanda, I think I've answered that. I think I've answered that. That enables in the balancing. It enables in the balancing in both sides.
There is another question from Kitulu Day, and they are asking, kindly elaborate on how to give the magnification of a drawn diagram.
Magnification, it's going to depend on how big you're going to draw your diagram. For example, if you have been given a leaf, just a leaf, how big you're going to draw that leaf compared to how you have it on the ground or the actual size, that one is going to lead you to give on the magnification. So you get the magnification from comparing what you have drawn and what you have as the actual size of that leaf. So that is what guides on the magnification. And then you have to also have that multiplication sign before you give the magnification. And that shows how many times you have magnified it. So that gives how many times you have drawn it bigger than what was given in the actual one.
There is another question from Katelembu Center of Excellence, and they are asking, when labeling diagrams, is it a must to label on the right side?
Yes, that one is a guideline we have on the labeling. We have said that you make sure the label lines are going to move on the right side. I think also it is going also to bring out on the neatness when you're making the naming of the parts. So we do it on the right side because given a leeway, the students would do the labeling from all parts of the diagram.
Okay, there is another question from Chanda Secondary School, and they're asking, one molecule of lipid gives more energy than one molecule of glucose.
I've answered that.
Okay, there is another question from Kateka Kai.
Grammar.
How is grammar penalized in biology?
The grammar is going to be penalized, especially I've talked of when you miss out on the spelling mistakes, or in such a case when you're going to give a word which is going to have a different meaning, then that is going to be penalized. You don't score for that. And as I had told you earlier on, we are not going to have half a mark, even if you are almost giving the correct answer. It's either you score or you don't score.
Okay, there is another question from Chambuko Secondary School, and they're asking, can you be penalized when you use singular and you are supposed to use plural?
Yes, that one is going to be penalized if it was supposed to be one. If it was supposed to be one, and then you're going to give like a good example. If you're talking of one, it's a stoma, and then you're rating it as a stomata. If you, for example, you have that diagram of the guard cell, and then in the middle you have the stoma there. And the diagram is, the question is asking you to name that part. If you go ahead and write stomata, then you're going to be penalized for that because it's only one at that point, and then you've given it in its plural. That one you don't score. You don't score on that.
There is another question from Hapa Kitanga Secondary School, and they're asking, what is the importance of palisade cell in plants?
The palisade, in the palisade, that is where we have the chloroplast. That is where they are arranged there, the chloroplast, and that helps for them to be able to trap light for the process of photosynthesis to take place.
There is another question.
I've answered that one. Zingine ni repetition. Unless I confirm, I refer. You know how to.
Let us have a question from Kwandanze Secondary School. Kwandanze, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Okay, I have several questions about photosynthesis. In the procedure for testing starch in leaves, after you do all the other procedures, last part of softening the leaf, do you dip the leaf in?
Let's go one by one, please, so that I don't forget. Let's go one by one, please. One by one, please ask the first one.
In the procedure of testing starch in leaf.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the first one. In the procedure for testing starch in leaves, after you do all the other procedures, the last part of softening the leaf, do you dip the leaf in cold water or a warm water? Kindly do elaborate whether it is cold or warm water.
That one, I'm not clear on it for paper 3. When you want to test it, I think the cold water will do. I think hot water is going to have an effect in also killing the cells. So we're going to have the cold water. Next question.
Okay, Kwandanze, unmute your microphone once again and ask the second question.
Kwandanze, the next one.
When you are asked about a causative agent of a certain disease,
yes,
such as typhoid, you'll be penalized when you write bacterium as a causative agent instead of scientific name Salmonella typhi.
No, we are not going to penalize for that. If you give it, either if it's a bacteria or a virus, you're not going to get penalized for that if you're not sure of the scientific name of that organism which causes. But having the correct causative organism, if it is a bacteria or a virus, that also scores. But other times when marking is done, the rules are changed. You may find that this year they are going to be lenient on that. The other year, the rules even end up changing, and you're told strictly now go to the name of that organism which causes. So it is going to depend on how lenient we are year in and year out.
Okay, Kwandanze, kindly unmute your microphone once again and ask a question. Kwandanze.
The third question is about factors affecting the rate of photosynthesis. There is more debate on chlorophyll concentration and the type of the leaf. So I need some elaborate answer about that. Yes, chlorophyll concentration and type of the leaf is not included in our syllabus. Again, more about the variegated leaf, you need to discuss more about the chlorophyll concentration in relationship to the type of the leaf. Please, may you elaborate for me that question?
Yeah, let me do it. When we talk of rate of photosynthesis being affected by the chlorophyll, you are saying that it is not covered anywhere. There is a difference between variegated and the non-variegated ones. The variegated ones, you're going to see they have patches where some patches appear white in color. That means that they don't have the chlorophyll. So if you compare photosynthesis between the two leaves of variegated one and one which is non-variegated, in the one which is non-variegated, it is going to have much of the chlorophyll, and that also is going also to have more of the photosynthesis taking place. But in a variegated one, because of missing out some parts on chlorophyll, then also the rate of photosynthesis is going to be quite different and quite not much as what we have in the leaf, which is non-variegated.
Pandanze, do you have another question?
Yes, sir. Please, if you are asked to discuss about the factors, will you include the concentration of chlorophyll and type of the leaf? Indeed.
In such a question which is asking on factors affecting rate of what? Photosynthesis, no, those ones don't score. Those ones are not going to score. If you need on factors affecting rate of photosynthesis, no.
Pandanze, do you have another question? I hope it's
Yes. In genetics,
question.
Yes, in genetics, when you asked about Punnett square, will you start in Pareto, phenotypes, genotypes, gametes, and fertilization? And then the last step, you draw the Punnett square and give the offspring.
The Punnett square is quite, it's quite clear. It shows there's that part where you're going to start the drawing. The first part you're going to show the genotypes of the male. The other side, you're going to show the genotypes of the female. What is not clear about that, then that is going to work out and it is going to give you the F1 genotypes. That working out from it, it's going to give you the F1 genotypes.
Okay, let us have another question from Katelembu, Center of Excellence. Katelembu, Center of Excellence, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Yeah, question number 1.
Okay, you will go question by question.
Mostly tested in biology paper 1. Question number 2.
Kindly, Katelembu.
Question by question. Question by question, please. Let's start with the first one. Let's start with the first one.
Okay.
Yeah, and ask the first one.
Okay, which topics or chapters are mostly tested in biology paper 1?
I told you we don't have categories of chapters for paper 1. It just flows from any part of the syllabus. It's going to flow. So I said we don't have any specific. Number 2. Question number 2.
Question number 2. How does the KCSE biology grade system range?
Yeah, that I'm not going to answer because that is done. That is going to be done when marking and in reference to how the students have scored. That is when they come up with a grading system. We don't have a standard grading system. We don't have a constant one which is followed and adhered to each year. So the grading system is going to be considered according to the performance of the students. That is when they come up with it and agree what grade, what score is going to run or to make A, or which is the least one to make the E. So that is how they come up with the grading.
Katelembu, do you have another question?
Yes, the last one.
Okay.
Are the practical oriented questions among the tight questions?
They may be. Tied questions are not just for a specific. Tied questions are not for any specific content. Even you also get them even in the practical oriented ones. So either way, each chapter, any chapter may also have the tied questions.
Okay, let's have another question from Katekakai. Kindly, Katekakai, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Question 1. In the case of Dendro formula, what happens if one just did the formula without the total?
The formula is okay. You give the total number of teeth when the question needs you to. I was just giving you an example that time on how to work it out. But if the question is going to require you to calculate the total number of teeth, that is when you do it. Other times you have the jaw, which has been given, and then the question is going to be specific for you to just give the dental formula. In such a case, you don't need to give the total number of teeth. Mm-hmm.
Let us have another question from Kamuganga Secondary School. Kindly, Kamuganga, unmute your microphone and ask a question. Kamuganga Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone.
I've got a question. In case you are tackling capture recapture method, are you supposed to use the symbols? For example, P is equals to FC times SC over MR, or you have to write what the formula represents? And another question.
Yes, let me answer one. Let me answer one by one. We have said that we are not dealing with initials in the exam. We don't deal with the initials. So you write if it is first marked, second recaptured. You just write in full what the abbreviations stand for. You don't assume the examiner knows it for you. So you write in full to represent your formula. Yes, second question.
Kindly unmute again and ask your second question.
Is dichotomous key tested in exam?
Yes. It was even tested in last year's exam, but we don't have dichotomous key in paper 1. We have it in paper 3. It was there. Kindly refer to the past exams that we've had. It was there during last year's KCSE.
Okay, let us have another question from Chanda Secondary School. Chanda, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
So I was asking if you have been given a diagram, then you've been told to mention the function of one of the parts, and the parts have not been labeled. So can you use the letters used in that labeling to answer, or you have to identify the part?
You don't have to label there directly on the diagram. You can also do it. That is to guide you on how to answer. You can even have the labeling in your mind and know that part is what part, but you don't need to do it physically because it is not going to score anywhere. It is just going to lead you to identify the part and to give its function.
Okay, let us have another question from ABC Iveti Ailes. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. ABC Iveti Hills.
I have a question.
Yes.
And this is about in the point there are explanation question. Suppose you are told to explain 3 characteristics of living organism. You stated and you have not explained. Will you be awarded marks or not?
That question also will bear or will carry the weight of the marks which have been awarded. Mostly in the explaining question, you're going to find that we have the stating scoring a mark and the part of the explanation also scoring a mark. So in your case, if it's explaining on the 3 characteristics of living things, then I expect it to be tagged with the 6 marks, where one would go to the stating and the other one to the explanation. Other times also, you may also have the question on explaining, and then also like in your case, it would only have the 3 marks. So again, to get 3 marks, that means you distribute each mark to each explanation. So that would be 1 for each. And that if you only state, then it is not going to score because the question or the scoring part would go all the way to the explanation. So the explanation is the one which would score the mark. The stating and explanation would score the mark. So in such a case, that is how it can be, bearing in mind the number of marks that we have for that question.
Okay, let us have another question from Kaseve. K.C.S.E Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Cosmas Daudi, K.C.S.E. Differentiate between coordination and response.
Response is when we have any reaction to any stimuli. Coordination is how the nervous system is going to work to bring the change because of the affected stimuli.
Okay, let us have another question from Moore Hills Girls. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Moore Hills Girls.
We were asking, name the material which forms one, exoskeleton of arthropods, then the other one is the thick walls of xylem vessels.
Let's start number one.
You're told that name the material which forms. Now the first one is hard exoskeleton of arthropods.
That one is a chitin. The spellings are CHITIN. CHITIN. Next question.
The same question is the thick walls of xylem vessels.
It's the lignin. Lignin, LIGNIN.
What girls, do you have any other question?
Let's have questions which are going to help you in the scoring. Don't get into the syllabus because I may not be able to answer all those questions you have in the syllabus. It's for you to get back to the books and also consult with your teachers. Consult also with your teachers in other cases where you have some difficulties. Thank you. Read it out.
Okay, there is a question from K.C.S.E Secondary School, and they're asking, in terms of numbering, are we allowed to use hyphens as a form of numbering your points?
In terms of numbering, hyphens are not a form of numbering. Let me take you back to the board and give you an example on how we are going to penalize you when it comes to that. Let me do it for you. Like, for example, if it is a question which is asking on stating 3 characteristics of living things, state 3 characteristics of living things. And as the learner, number one, you're going to come and give nutrition. Number one, you come and give nutrition. Number two, you come and give excretion. And then number three, you come and give, okay, let me have it here. We have death, and then you come here and give on irritability. Such a question is requiring three characteristics of living things. You see, we don't have any numbering. So in such a case, let me tell you or show you how, when I talked of from left to right, that one is going to score. Then the examiner does not go downwards. We don't do the marking going downwards. So left to right, then I'll come and mark irritability. Then excretion, number three, you're going to get it. Okay, let me rephrase the questions to 5 characteristics. Then we have death, which is not a characteristic. So in such a case, what I want to help you in is when you are doing the answers. When you're doing the answers, let me do it again for you. Let's write death here. death as a characteristic. Let me again correct it like this. Then here we have nutrition. We have nutrition. Nutrition. So when I talk of marking from left to right, number one is going to score. That one is going to score. You can see where it is being written. Then we have death. Death is not going to score. If this question was asking on 3, then the examiner will just come and underline there. So nutrition is correct, but the examiner is not going to come and sympathize with you because it is correct and then give you a mark. So the easiest way for you when you are answering the questions, if you are not going to have them from left to right, because that is how the marking is going to be done, if you have to give your answers, if you're going to give your answers going downwards, if you have to give them going downwards, then in such a case, you can have them like that. We have number 1, nutrition. We have number 2, you're going to talk of excretion. Number 3, you can talk of locomotion. The numbering part is quite crucial. It is the one which is going to guide the examiner in following up on your answers. The other system, if you don't do that, then and is going to mark then based on here and here, left to right, then at other times you give an incorrect answer, which is going to follow in your answers if you had 4, and you're going to get, you're not going to score on that, and it is going to cost you. So the best thing is to number your answer, or else what he was asking is also using the hyphen, which also in such a case, if you have used the hyphen, here we have it, nutrition, excretion, but again, also, it's also going to be left to right. So here we have irritability. Then here we can talk of respiration. We talk of respiration. So in such a case, the marking again, if it was talking about 3 points, if it was talking about 3 points, and in your case here, this is where your death is going to be. This is where your death is going to be. Now let's see how the marking is going to be done. And here we only need 3 of them. We only need 3. So in such a case, we're going to have nutrition, again, irritability. Then the third answer, which is death, is going to cost you that mark. You're not going to score on it. And again, you're not going also to go and check on respiration and locomotion. It was strictly on the 3 marks which have been awarded. So the hyphens, you may also use them. They're not penalized, but I've given you a good example of numbering on how it is going to guide. Even if you number like this going downwards, Roman 1, 2, 3, that one at least gives the guide. Atakama, you have not also come also on the right side. It is going to guide the examiner on the answers which you have given.
Okay. Okay, let us have a question from Kimakimwe. Kimakimwe Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question.
I'm asking why the ovaries of an expectant woman can be removed after the first 4 months of pregnancy without terminating pregnancy.
The reason,
organized.
yes, let me answer one by one. You can have them removed. Initially, they were involved in production of the hormones, but after the 4 months, then the placenta takes over. The placenta is going to take over with the production of the hormone, progesterone, and that is the one which is going to help to maintain the pregnancy.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, there is a question from Chemotete that they're asking. On the dichotomous key, paper 3, on the identity column, is it a must that you give the real name of the organism?
Yes, that is paper 3, dichotomous. You have to give the real name, but it is not an issue because those organisms have their names. Once you have a question on the dichotomous key, the organisms which you have been given, they're going to have the names. That it is not your work to look for the name. The organism has its name. So that column should have the name for its identity, but it is not going to be a hassle for you because we know you don't have the names of all the organisms, all the plants which may be given in such a case, or all the animals which may be given in such a case. So yes, you are going to give the real name, but it is provided.
Okay, let us have a question from St. Valentine's. St. Valentine's, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. St. Valentine's?
Okay, thank you. So our first question is...
Kindly, St. Valentine's, you can reduce the background noise by reducing the volume of your machine.
Okay, our first question is, in drawing diagrams...
Kindly, St. Valentine's, reduce the volume of your PA system, kindly. Reduce the volume of your PA system.
Diagrams, if, for instance, a structure you are to be labeled is due to the left side, and according to the biological drawing, we are supposed to be labeled the diagram on the right side. Are we allowed to extend the label line inside the diagram, or how are we supposed to make the label line appear to the right side?
No, don't have the label line interfering with the diagram itself. You can find a way to get it on the right side. You can get a link on how you can have it on the right side, but not getting inside the diagram that you have drawn. Next question.
Okay, there is a question from Kamutanga Secondary School, and they're asking, in classification, when asked about the importance of an organism, what do you have to answer? Then they are also asking, when asked about the phylum and the class, are you going to state concerning to the given question?
I'm not getting the first part in classification when asked to give the importance of an organism. Like, okay, that I get that question in paper 3. Like, for example, if you're talking about, you have like the bee, which is the one which is a specimen which is being there, and you asked about the importance. What do you answer in such a question? For the bee, you know what you'd answer for it, how it aids in pollination, but that one we wouldn't have it in paper 1. Then when asked about the phylum and the class, are you going to state concerning to the given? I'm not getting that question. Phylum, if you have to put it in the correct phylum, you have to know the phylum that which organism belongs to, and also class, because from the phylum, then you're going to go to the classes of the organism. You also have to know where it is placed.
Okay, we are going to have the last 2 questions. And we are going to have one question from Katoloni Secondary School. Kindly, Katoloni, unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Okay, my question is about what are the main ideas that led to formulation of Lamarckian theory of evolution?
Loudly, come again. What are they?
What are the main ideas that led to formulation of Lamarckian theory of evolution?
I don't know whether you have asked it the way it is supposed to be, or maybe you are asking why it was disputed. Are you sure you are asking about what led to the formulation? The Lamarckian theory, which is going to explain on the use and disuse of an organ, where they gave the giraffe as an example. I'll answer on why they disputed that theory, because we talked of the developed characteristics cannot be inherited. And so that is why they disputed that theory by Lamarck. I had to research from the name.
Okay, there is a question from Kitanga, Upper Kitanga Secondary School, and they're asking, in practicals, for example, is it necessary to put exact drops needed, or you can say 3 to 4 drops or few?
That is also another question for paper 3, which I'll not guide you, but I'll just tell you what we do according from what we teach, but I don't mark paper 3. It's simple. If it is a few drops, we mostly talk of maybe two drops. If it is indicating 2 to 3, if you put in excess, then it is not going to give you the results. Remember, this is you're doing it in the food test. It is going to have an effect on the reagents which you are using, and the way they are supposed to react to give you a certain observation. So in such a case, if it is telling you to add 2 drops, you stick to that, because there's that expectation from the observation which you are supposed to get.
Okay, we are going to have the last question from Kiteini Secondary School. Kindly, Kiteini, unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kiteini Secondary School, kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Okay, we are going to have the last question from Kamudanga Secondary School. Kindly unmute your microphone and ask your question. Kamudanga Secondary School.
Okay, I'm Oncheri Brown from Kamudanga, and I'm asking, if you are told to draw a diagram, are you supposed to frame your diagram?
Are you supposed to?
Frame your diagram.
Are you supposed to do what?
To frame your diagram.
To frame it. Framing the diagram. Framing the diagram is not going to lead to any penalization. Framing, that is adding that the borderline all around it, it is not going to lead to any penalization, but the scoring is in that diagram. Okay, I just talk now. Yes, sir. Okay, we've run out of time. I know you have so many questions. Others I had also promised, I don't know which other school I promised to consult or to check further before I give you what is not correct. But allow me to sign off so that you can prepare for the other session that you have in the afternoon. And I'm sure we're going to do more of these sessions, and we're going to have ample time so that you can have a bit of coverage. I wish you all the best in the forthcoming exams. If you put in mind what we have gone through today, I'm sure you're going to make a difference in your grades.